Hey everybody, Tommy here, World at War Comics, and my next two guests are absolutely amazing. I had a blast talking to them. We have Mr. James the Third and Connor Ratcliffe. Both of them are actors, directors, writers, and right now they are currently writing the new Stitch comic book from Dynamite Comics, which comes out in August. I hope you really enjoy this. We talk about Star Wars at the beginning, and I absolutely had a blast. And of course, we talked about Stitch and the writing process and everything that went into bringing this story alive. Don't forget to get your Stitch comic in August in your local comic book store. All right, without further ado, here's Connor and James. Thanks, everybody. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to World at War Comics. I have two amazing guests, James the Third and Connor Ratcliffe, here to talk about Stitch, which is coming this August by Dynamite Comics. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Doing well,
Doing
doing
good.
well.
Good. I love to jump into your background before we get into Stitch. I just got done watching Connor. You had Adam Scott on your George Lucas show, which was hilarious. It was probably a little while ago, but I just picked
Yeah.
it. I was laughing so hard, man. What a crazy show. I absolutely loved it. I don't know why I haven't seen it before, but it was a lot of fun.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I've been pretending to be George Lucas in that show for over a decade now, but I really started doing the character back in the '90s just to amuse my friends.
Yeah.
That was that was sort of our way of coping when a lot of Star Wars fans in my generation started getting angry. Me and my friends just started having fun because we realized when the special editions came out, oh, these might not be completely tailored to our taste. The
Yeah.
new stuff was like, oh, it's not hitting with us. Maybe we should sort of recalibrate our expectations for these new movies he's going to make. And it was I have to say, it was a much healthier way of dealing with them because by the time we got to Phantom Menace, we could sort of take the good and also enjoy the bad because it's just like, oh, this is not. It was so funny to me that George Lucas had such total control and
Yeah.
was taking such big swings that no one had really asked for.
Yeah.
Uh, it just the confidence of what he has always just sort of, when he's right, and when he's wrong, he has the power to do it anyway. Kind of,
It's just so funny to think that without George Lucas talk show, there's a version of you that's just like, I hate everything. Like you're just like spewing all kinds of negativity online and like
Yeah, it was sort of a fun, in a way. What I do with George Lucas is a variation on what my favorite thing about Star Wars was as a kid, which is you play with the action figures and you get to make
yeah.
your own stories. And I just started doing that with George Lucas. He's sort of the ultimate Star Wars character for me. Because I used to, when I'd play with Star Wars toys, I'd make up funny stories. I would always come up with like, what's a funny Star Wars adventure?
Yeah.
And in the '90s, that became a game where my friends would just every now and then would say, "Hey George, what are you working on today?" And I would just explain some new scene that would be, ultimately not that much more ridiculous than what the prequels ended up being. Those special edition scenes are a really good indicator. Like if you like those, you're about to have a great time watching the prequels.
So was this Spaceballs before Spaceballs then?
It was after Spaceballs,
Oh, okay.
but whenever I rank the Star Wars films, Spaceballs always outranks at least 5 or 6 Star Wars films at this point. Like just like how Galaxy Quest is better than at least half of the official Star Trek movies.
Yeah.
It just is a
Especially those
great.
later
It's
ones.
a great Star Trek movie on its own, and I feel the same way with Spaceballs. And Spaceballs 2 is the only thing about Spaceballs 2, which has just been announced. The only thing is people are very excited about the Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money, which was the joke from the movie. There's a funnier title, or a title I prefer anyway, which was Rick Moranis' pitch from way back, was that the sequel should be called Spaceballs 3, The Search for Spaceballs 2.
Yeah.
Which to me, I mean, there's still time. To me, I think that's an all-time comedy sequel title.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
James, you've been on that podcast as well, right?
I have, yes. And every time I'm on it, I'm grasping at any kind of stability. It's so bonkers. It's such a bonkers show. I love it.
Yeah, I always think it's a good refuge for both non-Star Wars fans who want to have fun with something that's Star Wars adjacent, and also Star Wars fans who don't want to be angry but just want to have some, just want to celebrate the ridiculousness that is George Lucas, one of the weirdest benevolent billionaires in the world. Even like right now, George Lucas is still trying to open his art museum in LA, which we've been talking about on my show for so long that now when people hear there's a real museum in LA that looks like a spaceship, I cannot tell you how many people have approached us and said, we thought that was a bit for like 8 years, and now we see it's a real building that people are going to go inside and look at paintings.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh, man. Well, do you dislike all of the TV shows that they come out with as well, both of you?
The Star Wars TV
Like
shows?
Andor, or did you
No,
like?
no,
Oh
I'm
no.
pretty. You know, the thing is, like, the prequels weren't for me, but I've actually been pretty happy with the Disney era of Star Wars. That not everything is hits for me,
Yeah.
but there. It should be acknowledged that the acting
Hmm.
has become more of a priority in every Disney Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
Whether it's where you want the story to go, the dialogue, I can say that I think James can probably confirm this as an actor. It's
Yeah.
always easier
Oh
to
yeah.
learn lines and act dialogue when the dialogue is good. And Disney era Star Wars dialogue, by and large, is a lot easier to say than Lucas era Star Wars dialogue.
Yeah. I truly love most of them. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
as versed in a lot of the show. Like I missed a lot of like Clone Wars. So like when Ahsoka came out and stuff, I was like, oh, I'll try to watch this, but it was like I'm actually lost. Like I don't know, like I don't have the context for what this is. But I love most of them, and I rewatched Phantom Menace last night, literally last night at the time that we're recording
Phantom
this.
Menace is my favorite of the prequels. It's the one
Yeah,
that's shot on film, so lots of it looks like a classic Star Wars movie.
yeah,
I love The Mandalorian. I think Andor is weirdly it's kind of the perfect Star Wars thing for the generation that didn't like the prequels, because it is such a grown up. There's
Hmm.
so much
yeah.
disappointment baked in it. I've compared The Last Jedi to The Wire, David Simon's
Yeah.
HBO show, and I think Andor is also very obviously like The Wire, but
Yeah.
they're The Wire being sort of my shorthand for like an adult drama about how like organized systems often let us down, or actively work against our interests,
Yeah.
and how the best intentions sometimes don't pay off. It has that kind of. Last Jedi was sort of like things were like, hey, this went nowhere. I'm like, no, it went where The Wire goes, which is you spend all season trying to achieve something, and in the last episode it falls apart.
Yeah.
Or a minor miscommunication ruins the galaxy somehow. And I think Andor is like that. Andor feels like Treme or
Yeah.
We Own This City, or it feels like
100%.
any of David Simon's shows about how look at how hard it is to get people organized and achieve something good.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
speech
100%.
that speech that Sarsgaard gives about like how he burns his all of his ideals to achieve a sunset that he'll never get to see. That whole thing is just like very much feels like it's something that could have been written by Richard Price or somebody, like one of the David Simon. Like it feels like I don't know, like the movie Clockers or something, where it's like, but as Star Wars, where you're just like, things are bad, let's keep trying.
Yeah. And that's also what I appreciate most about the fact that they're doing these series is that they all sort of kind of fill a void that hasn't existed, that of a thing that was not there before, like
almost every scene in Andor feels like they were like, what scenes have never been in a Star Wars?
Yeah.
What kind of thing has never been in a Star Wars? Let's do that. And I'll tell you the thing I've really been enjoying is there was one post in particular somewhere on the socials that I really enjoyed, where someone watched Rogue One and A New Hope right after Andor, and their description of how crazy A New Hope is as the conclusion of Andor.
Right.
That they're like, all the characters who did all the work are dead.
Dead.
And then they described it as this like this hayseed twink on a desert planet teams up with like a couple of drug dealers, one of whom is a big dog, and then he turns off his navigation machine so that a ghost can tell him where to shoot. You're just like, this is a fever dream of these are the people who get the medals at the end of all of this organizing, all of this pain and suffering, and these weirdos rescue a princess, fall into a trash compactor. You know, it's just it's such a bonkers thing. It's like when that thing where you draw a circle without a compass, and when you get back at the end, you're like, oh, it doesn't quite connect.
Yeah. It's not the same thing, but it's like the two things that came to my mind as you were describing that were like, it is sort of like Zack Snyder's first half of Justice League, Joss Whedon's second half of Justice League crammed together, you know, and or that like that meme of drawing a horse where it's like it starts as like a penciled drawing, like expertly drawing of a horse, and each panel gets worse and worse, and it's finally a stick figure. Like that's what that telling of that story is.
Well, I mean, I thought personally Rogue One was one of my favorite things that Disney has done with Star Wars. I absolutely love that movie, and I feel like Andor has been the best, series that they have done. I enjoyed the first two seasons of Mandalorian. I thought the third one got a little kooky, a little corny. I enjoyed it, but I felt like the first two seasons were a little bit more serious. Boba Fett, I was really excited about, and I just like, it didn't hit for me.
I tell
like
you
I
what, though,
wanted it
I'm gonna come in here with some major Book of Boba Fett defense because to me, it is the purest expression of George Lucas style Star Wars storytelling because everybody waited for decades for Boba Fett to come back based on very little, like what he does in the movie,
based on literally next to nothing,
and a certain percentage of the very few scenes that everyone projected their dreams, their visions, the coolest badass in Star Wars. I'll remind you, the first fight you ever see him in, he gets knocked off of a platform in the style of like a Marx Brothers movie or something.
It truly. I rewatched that. I rewatched that after Phantom Menace, and it's literally like you hear like
Boba Fett dies, or at the time anyway, dies a slapstick death.
Yeah. Fair enough.
To me, the idea that you would bring back Boba Fett as this guy who's like, look, I just want to retire. And he's just a guy, and everyone's like, he should wear the cool outfit again. He should do this, he should do that. I compared it to, at the time, imagine like a little kid who sees a UPS driver and it's like, cool. You get to wear shorts and you drive around like that. And then you cut to that guy 30 years later and they're like, why don't you drive the UPS truck and dress like a UPS driver? Like, because that was my job for a while.
Long time.
I just want to not do that. Like, I didn't even, it was not great for me. You know, like it was not great for me. I spent a lot of my life being digested inside this sand mouth. My favorite thing is when he's on that speed or whatever that bike is, that vehicle he's on. He's like room, and he's just a dad.
Yeah,
it's just like, hey, look at this. He's on like an all-terrain vehicle, and he's like, pretty cool, huh? It's the ultimate, like, you thought you wanted to see what's happening with Boba Fett. Well, here's what's happening with Boba Fett. Oh, you don't like it? Well, guess what? Life's hard.
It was always this. It was always the whole time. This is what it was.
You didn't like it either, it seemed like.
Oh, you thought it was cool to be a bounty hunter, chasing fugitives around the galaxy and then like trying to bring them back in? You know, like the coolest version of Boba Fett was Robert De Niro in Midnight Run. That's the job. That's the job. And that guy just wants to open a little coffee shop.
Yeah.
Like they literally, if you watch Midnight Run, you can see the template for Boba Fett's whole story, which is Charles Grodin as Han Solo, Robert De Niro as Boba Fett, and he's just like, just wants to open a little place and have a peaceful life.
Oh my gosh, man.
Yep.
Whew, I feel like I just lived one of your episodes. That's
Oh
amazing.
yeah, absolutely. I would say that that's the thing. I would say that's my version of George is 50% my this weird idea of George, and it's 50% just me and my thoughts.
It works great. It works great. Are your fans, after they watched your episode, surprised at how much Adam Scott knows about Star Wars? I mean, he's a genuinely big fan, right?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, like very often the people that come on the show have a better mind for Star Wars details than I do. I don't have great recall for the names of robots and aliens and planets, and it also doesn't matter to me. Like the way I always watched Star Wars as a kid, it's like that thing of when you're watching a show like Ahsoka or something. I don't care if there's stuff I'm missing. Part of what I like about Star Wars is that you just need to know, like, oh, they're trying to get the thing. They got to blow up the thing. That guy's bad. This guy's good. Wait, his dad? And it's all very, even the twisty stuff is very simple. My favorite scene in Phantom Menace, is when they, the red force fields that they run through at the end, and then they have to wait because
devastating.
these things.
Devastating.
And it's so great dramatically. And my favorite thing about them is, I mean, I've looked them up.
What are they? Like, what do they do?
But it's not important what they do. They're just a thing. You can't go through them. I mean, there's an explanation for what they are. Oh, it's heating and cooling or whatever.
It's literally the Force, i.e., the plot saying he has to watch Qui-Gon die.
Yes,
that's what it is.
And the real explanation has to do with like heating and cooling, and it's like the air conditioner. Like it's the air conditioning system means that you can't go through here.
I literally started writing for myself. The Force is making when I was watching it. The Force is making Obi-Wan watch him die. Like that's all this is. Like,
and the reality of it is like it'll get too hot in here unless we flush out this heat. It's literally like you could have a scene. That'd be the show I'd want to make, is the guys who just install that in that building. Where they're just it's gonna get too hot.
They sort of do that, you know. They kind of are doing stuff like that, like in Andor when the Andy Serkis arc, where they're just like, and also those gears go in the Death Star.
Yes.
Like, how that ended. I was like, I would truly watch exactly what you just described. I would truly watch that show. Just those mechanics.
I mean, James, honestly, it would be a great show for you and me to be in. It would be like if we could pick the Star Wars to just be like, it's gonna get too hot. You're gonna want to flush it out, and you got to do it inside because you got to put up. You're looking at 6 or 7 red screens,
and it's got to be.
And they got to rotate. You got to rotate so the heat goes in a pocket, then the screen goes up, it goes down. You get another heat pocket.
And it's how many do you need? Several yards.
Several
yards worth.
You're gonna, and you can't turn these. Like you can't turn them all off at once.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, it's doable. It's doable. You're also going to need a hole in the middle of the floor.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to, and you got to put up signs. If you don't put up signs, people are going to fall in the hole. And if you have any younglings near here, you can't have any younglings around here. This is...
Oh, we got to stop. You're ruining everything for me. Oh.
That's so real.
It really is
real.
That is hilarious, man. That is hilarious.
But it's great. It's great storytelling to me. I know there are people who like to have everything explained, but for me, my favorite stuff is when I don't understand.
Yeah, I didn't need to know what those things were.
I think like one of my favorite things in Last Jedi is when he's milking those creatures on the side of the mountain, and people are just like, "What are they? What's going on?" And you're just like, "That's where he gets his milk."
Yeah, no, that's I think that's the best thing about the late stage sequels is they'll just be a creature. Like
randomly,
each one is like, here's just a random creature that's involved, but like we're not even gonna address it more than it just being here. That's my favorite thing about it.
It's also very funny on Andor how reluctantly they include just the slightest amount of creature.
Yeah.
Like it's the most human centric, where every now and then you have one guy working with someone who doesn't say anything, just like, rah, rah, rah. Like this place used to be crawling with creatures. No, mostly people, but look, there's that guy working on that ship. He's like,
That is, now that you said that, there really isn't very many creatures at all in this series.
It's why I love in Rogue One the crazy scene where what's the thing where it's like the the crazy creature that can read your that's like a lie detector alien that Forrest Whitaker has. Forrest Whitaker's character is so insane. I love how much he shows up, and it's
He's in it a
always
lot,
just
yeah.
like,
In so much. He's in so much.
and he's just like, you're just like, wait. Everybody who partners with him is kind of like, oh, this guy is a lot.
And why does he need his breathing device sometimes and other times he doesn't?
Well, it's like with a sleep
Got
apnea
helium or
machine. You
something.
don't have to use it every night,
Yeah,
but
you
you
don't need it
should.
all the time. Sometimes,
You think that he, what's his character's name? I always forget his name.
you
I
can't.
can't remember yet.
You no idea.
All I know is he woke
Several
up with a CPAP.
consonants.
He had a CPAP and he was going to die, and then all of a
Saw
sudden he
Gerrera.
was healed.
Saw Gerrera. That's another
Yeah.
scene I'd love is Saw Gerrera getting prescribed that machine where it's like, you got to use this all the time. He's like, I won't. I'll use it when I feel like it. Not a moment more.
And what the insurance of it is and how much
He's checking his app that monitors his usage. He's like, oh, I scored a 33.
I need a George.
The mask has okay. So I got 5 hours with it, but the mask connection was not good. Oh, 3 incidents per hour, not bad.
Wow,
I just really
truly.
want more than anything. What I
Truly.
would love to make happen in the Star Wars world is and no one has done it yet. It's the same thing that at one point I really wanted to happen in the world of Law and Order, which is to make a multi-camera sitcom with the studio audience.
Yeah.
I always wanted there to be at the height of Law and Order when they had like 4 or 5 shows on NBC. They had Criminal Intent, SVU, regular Law and Order, and I was like, wouldn't it be great if there was like a studio audience one where you'd still have the dun, but then it would very cut back to what's clearly a set. You get Richard Belzer in it, and you'd have walk-ons and cameos by different people. And I really want that with Star Wars. I really want a multi-camera studio audience Star Wars show.
They tried to do it with I can't remember what specific Marvel characters, but they tried to do it with Marvel, and so I would bet that the discussions have at least happened. Do you know what I mean? Like they've at least sort of like someone has brought it up, but they and whatever happened with the Marvel one, that didn't pan out, so they're like, I don't know, but. There's still time. There's still time.
There's so many mundane situations where you could set something that would be like, it's like Cheers, but it's a Star Wars.
And one of my favorite DC shows was this show Powerless, which didn't do well and everyone hated it and blah. But it was just like the workers in Gotham. Like it was just like it was a workplace comedy in Gotham. I loved it.
Just like James, you and I can make this so easily. It's so easy to imagine. Like we could get Zach Cherry, Darcy Carden, Brandon Scott Jones, and Star Wars,
and that's
it's
it.
Just like you get Nicole Byer.
Somebody's in a robe.
Nicole Byer, Star Wars, and it's all in the same reality, and it's just like.
Also, did lightsabers not come out until later? I feel like on Andor there was very little lightsabers.
Because there's very little.
There's no Jedi. Yeah, there's no Jedi around.
Even if you think about when Luke sees the lightsaber in New Hope, it's kind of like this weird artifact. It's like someone showing like a U2 iPod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, what is that? And you're like, oh yeah, well they're iPods. That's why they call them podcasts. Like, what are you talking about? And you're like, yeah. This one was branded by the band U2, and like, who's that? Well, these old Irishmen. Like,
yeah.
That's what lightsabers basically were in that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love it, man.
Cool.
I love it. Well, gentlemen, I would love to go back in time a little bit and just talk a little bit about storytelling. And maybe we'll start with you, James. Like, where did the passion for storytelling begin? And then we'll go to you, Connor, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the specific main influence was. I mean, as a kid, I did like impressions of cartoons, and that's what sort of like a lot of my performance grew out of. I'm a big Jurassic Park fan, and so like that is what started me like looking at like featurettes and behind the scenes and like and being interested in like filmmaking and stuff. A lot of it starts there, but I was like always kind of scribbling scripts and like drawing comics of my like I remember my friend Farron my friend Farron Anderson. I drew this comic series of us when I was in the second grade. It was The Adventures of James and Farron, and it was like us going all over the world and seeing, going over waterfalls and boats and strange exotic animals and stuff like getting into a sword fight for no reason at all and stuff like that. But it a lot of it started when I was a kid, that early mid 90s.
Do you still have any of those early comics?
I don't have any of those. I do have some of my I wrote a book about dinosaurs that like has like different like dinosaurs and on each page like a description of who they are and like how to phonetically say their names, because that was what every dinosaur book was. I do still have that, but I don't have any of the I can picture the James and Farron comics. Like I remember what they looked like, but none of those. I think those are all lost to time.
Was there someone in your life that really encouraged you to go in that direction of storytelling? Like, is there
Yeah,
one or two people?
yeah. I mean, my sisters and I, we were all sort of like artistically inclined growing up, and my mom was very supportive of that. We ended up going to performing arts middle school and high school for that like her like figuring out what those things even are and getting us connected with that. But then my middle school drama teacher, Wendy Duke, who I met in the fourth grade, she big part of my life, big, very strong influence in terms of like storytelling and
That's
and
awesome.
and being a performer and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. How about you, Connor? When in life did you get this passion for storytelling and all that good stuff?
I mean, well, my mom did a lot of like community theater growing up, so I was always around plays and things. And my dad hosted he was a local weatherman and kid show host,
Mm.
and so we always were. I was always watching movies and cartoons and TV and plays. I always just and reading books and I was always like devouring comics and books and novels and stories. And I just always that's what I always liked. It's sort of I always liked distracting myself. I remember when it was my bedtime and I would go to bed, one of the things I would do before I go to sleep is I would always act out stories with my stuffed dolls. I would always just have these stuffed dolls and I would do shows for myself. Like when it was time to not watch other things, I would do my own. So that was always the muscle that I was flexing. And I always just wanted to make stuff. I wanted to make my own stories and especially funny things, especially things that would make people laugh. And that's also the thing of like any toys I played with, it was always geared around that. That was what was fun about action figures is that you would, nowadays I think if you're like a kid and you like Star Wars, you have your work cut out for you. You have,
Yeah, you got to make a
just
movie.
you have so many, but you just in order to catch up, you have
Right.
9 movies just for one family,
Yeah.
and then all the other stuff and all the books and all the comics. Whereas for me, I was right at the age where I was 3 when the first one came out. So, or I was, I guess when the first one came out, it was 2. I saw it when I was 3 when they re-released it a year later, and then I had to wait 2 years for another Star Wars thing, and then another few years for another Star Wars thing, and the time in between episode 4 and episode 5, between episode 5 and episode 6, and then for a long time after that, it was just a thing that sparked my imagination. And it was the same thing with like the Muppets or with Looney Tunes. It would just everything I liked made me want to like do those things, maybe want to make some version of those things. Um, and then you sort of start shifting into other areas where you're like doing plays and stuff like that, and you're not necessarily at the time connecting it to the same impulse, but it's all connected to the same impulse. I like these things. Oh, I also like doing these things. And then you find out, oh, I'm no good at sports. What am I good at? I'm like, oh, I'm kind of good at drawing. But what I really like is doing something that tells a funny story, or, and then you start to realize like, oh, maybe drawing isn't my thing. Maybe acting, and that's my version of drawing. And then, decades later, discovering improv, and you're like, oh, this is writing. This is acting and performing, but where you're also writing and you're also collaborating with the people you're on stage with,
Yeah. And
Something you said I really connected with. The time in between the release of something, like the time, like just reminded me of the time between like the first Jurassic and the Lost World, the time between the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, and the fact that there were years,
Mm-hmm.
the years between, like your mind is like building. Oh, what it'd be cool if they did this and they did that, and yeah, absolutely, 1000% get
Yeah,
you.
like there's questions that lingered. Like when I was 3 and I saw Star Wars and Obi-Wan Kenobi died, and before he dies, he says, "If you strike me down, you'll make me more powerful than you can possibly imagine." And then he dies, and you're like, "Well, he helps out with the Death Star, but that's imaginable.
Hmm.
Like that wasn't too hard to imagine. I'm going to tell Luke where to shoot." Like if he'd said that, it'd be much more. If Obi-Wan had said, "If you strike me down, my ghost will tell Luke Skywalker where to shoot his blasters and blow up your Death Star," that would have felt like a really kind of almost petty threat. Like, oh, really? But I remember the years thinking like more powerful than you possibly imagine. And I'd say that's a good example for people who are like, the Disney era doesn't make any sense. I'm like, there's 2 more movies, and all Obi-Wan sort of does is consult.
yeah,
Yeah.
the consultant.
He's a consultant. But so it's kind of an empty threat. He doesn't say like, if you strike me down, I will become a consultant. It's just like, but I remember those years thinking like more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And then you have Empire, which ends on all these huge everything's bad. Everything kind of didn't work, and Han Solo was frozen and kidnapped. And then you have years to just mull that over and think, well,
Yeah.
how would I resolve the story? And then you see how they resolve the story, and you know, uh, I remember feeling like, oh, good. Like I wasn't like, hey, I thought of better ways.
You're right.
I
Right.
was like, oh, good. So that's how it really happened. You
Yeah.
guys are the ones who make Star Wars, not me. Um, there was a humility to Star Wars fans in that time where at least some there. I mean, there were people who were mad when Empire came out, but
Mm.
but I
Because
remember
truly, I
having
can't imagine. How dare you?
what I
Like,
what I think is kind of the healthy way to do it, which is that I spent years making up my own version of how Han Solo got rescued, and then when I
hmm
saw the movie, I'm like, oh, that's how it really happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't make Star Wars. I'm a child. I don't know how to begin making Star Wars.
I'm a child.
Um, but yeah, that thing where it's great when you have something creative that sparks your own mind to, and that's why a lot of the best adult entertainment leaves things for you to wonder about. Like, for example, with
Mhm.
Andor, I really liked when Tony Gilroy in interviews was explaining how he, it starts out with him trying to find his sister, and then you never pay that off. And he's like, yeah, because in real life, he probably wouldn't have been able to find her.
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
realistic outcome that he did other things. And it's just like, the same way that you don't find out what happens to Andy Serkis's character,
Right.
but your mind is allowed to assume, does he end up going back and getting locked up again? Does he jump and drown? Does he,
Mhm.
like, what does he do? And there's no one answer that's as satisfying as what your mind does with the last thing he says being, I can't swim, and him just standing there, and you are forever wondering. You're forever kind of left hanging in a place that, as an adult, I think that's a very satisfying sort of like, it's an itch
Mhm.
that you can never fully scratch. It's sort of like I like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Amazing. Well, how did you two come together for this Stitch title? What was the story behind you coming together for that? Obviously, you've known each other for a long time, and that makes a lot of sense. But Dynamite, knowing that relationship already brought you two together?
Yeah, I mean, James and I had met through Upright Citizens Brigade Theater and doing improv. And we were both, there's a certain level that you get to at UCB where you're a main stage performer. It means you kind of like pop into shows. You ask, hey, will you sit in on this? We do this. A couple times we got paired up to do touring where we tour around and do improv shows. And it's always great whenever you meet somebody that you really like and you really enjoy performing with and you get along with, and then you're looking for like, oh, what can I do to work? And I remember with me and James, there was a moment, I don't remember whether I said this to you, there was a moment where I was like, James and I need to develop a show together. And then you moved to LA and I was like, oh, all right.
I do remember that. I do remember it being a thing. I don't remember if it was like develop a show, but I do remember we were trying to figure something out before I ended up moving.
I'm going to see if I go back in our texts if there is
yeah, if the exact record of the moment of
if there's a moment where I'm like, hey, let's run a show, and I'm gonna see how far back our texts go.
Mine now delete after 2 years, so I know I don't.
I never know when I buy a new device whether other stuff, old text upload, or how far back it goes. But I'm gonna scroll down and see what the earliest thing I can find is.
While Connor is looking for that,
Yeah.
I think the way that Nate found us at Dynamite is that we do eventually, Connor and I do eventually do a show together, but to Connor's point, we develop it, on opposite coasts. Like I'm still in Los Angeles, Connor is still in New York, and it's this show about, I'm like I said, a big Jurassic Park fan, and this show about two scientists who create tiny dinosaurs. It's a Jurassic Park situation, but it's not, because the problem with Jurassic Park is that the dinosaurs were too big. The dinosaurs are too big, make them small. And it's this kind of half, loosely scripted, improvised comedy podcast. We have some interviews, we have some characters. And so Nate had heard that podcast. I mean, the story is he heard that podcast and was like, oh, I got to get these guys on Stitch. I got to get them. I think, I don't know how deep into the podcast he was at what point, but he found us through that.
Yeah, we did 2 seasons on Adam McKay. He has this company, Hyper Object Industries, and we both know this producer there named Harry Nelson, who had a budget for a comedy podcast. I love the fact that James loves the Jurassic Park movie so much, and we had talked about an idea, still a viable idea for.
Yeah, we still got to do it.
We still have a movie where we want to do that. We like the idea of doing a movie where the whole movie is just running from dinosaurs, but we never explain. It'd be like if Jurassic Park happened in secret somewhere, and then the dinosaurs get loose, and you're just dealing with it as a problem. You're like, we don't know how they got here. We never explain it. And it's just people, just funny characters running and screaming from dinosaurs. And we had this idea. We're like, the problem with that idea is, in order to do it, it has to be as expensive as a Jurassic Park. And then we were like, what if we did a version where we made them really tiny? It would be cheaper to make a show like that where they're little animated dinosaurs and they're really small.
Honey, I Shrunk the Dinosaurs type thing.
We're like, because then they're not as big a thing. We could have them in the background in a little contained area.
Yeah.
And then we were thinking of it as like an Adult Swim type show. And then when Harry was like, we have this idea for a podcast, we were like, hey, how would if we do Tiny Dinos? It'll be even easier to do it where we don't have to show them. We just have to hear them. And we were already well into developing it. We realized we could have done the full size dinosaurs
because there's a podcast, you can do anything.
But doing an improvised sort of sitcom talk show that's in the world of sort of crazy science things, ridiculous, silly science things happening, I think that sparked Nate. The thing is, we made this thing, and the day that our podcast was announced in Deadline was also the day that Hyper Object Industries shut down its podcast division. So we've now had the experience. You can find Tiny Dinos, the podcast, 2 seasons, lots of great guest stars, very funny. But it was sort of released into the world the way a message in a bottle is released into the ocean, which is without a promotional budget, without selling any ads, it was really hard to get. It's a very well kept secret for the people who for the the sphere peers
The
that are
sphere.
fans who like the show. And I think it will. I think it's the thing people will keep discovering. Maybe Stitch will lead people back to
Yeah.
Tiny
Yeah,
Dinos.
honestly.
But if Tiny Dinos may only have existed so that we could end up writing for the most popular title in the world.
Yeah.
Right now, like Lilo and Stitch, the reboot movie is more
100%.
popular than Mission Impossible. It's the most
Yeah.
like go into any Five Below, and it's basically just a Stitch store.
Yeah.
I do find it unbelievable that this happened. It's so strange the number of things that had to happen for to lead to this.
We had to make a well-regarded but deeply like unheard podcast. Puts us in a position to put out 8 issues of a title that is perhaps among the top 10 most valuable sort of cartoon character IPs right now. Just like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's sort of
for somebody, and then for it to be in the hands of somebody like Nate, who I had seen like some interview that he had shared recently where he talks about how open to, like, he's like, I'll, if people are tweeting their portfolios or whatever, I'll look at that, like he's, that's not something that everyone is receptive to. So like for him to be like hearing the podcast and then going, oh, I want to reach out to these people who I don't even at that time, not even knowing if we had ever written a comic or anything like that.
and I had not.
Reaching
James has, but I have not.
but like not even knowing, and
Yes.
being open to, it's crazy the number, all of that
And I
lining
will
up.
say, like obviously we're making these comics, we're writing these comics within a process, and it's there was a period where I thought, oh, it's maybe not happening. We were sort of texting each other.
Yeah.
We had a Slack, we had all this stuff, but there was a period where like we haven't heard from them for a while. They may have they came to us and they said, will you pitch some ideas? We pitched a bunch of ideas. I won't say there's one idea that I always pitch. I won't say what it is, but I always pitch an idea, and it's always because I know they won't approve it. It's not anything inappropriate. It's just something that is very presumptuous in terms of the characters that we could fold into the Disney characters that we would be allowed to fold into this universe. But we pitched these ideas, and then sort of like came back to us, and they were like, these things will work, these things won't work. And there were, it's such a big, there's so much happening that sometimes the reason will be, oh, we can't, this is a good idea, but we can't do this kind of story because it bumps up against this other thing we're doing. So you can't do a story that has this kind of thing in it. Or they'll have a question. They'll be like, why is this happening? You'll be like, well, this is why. I'm like, all right, okay. And so we're doing stuff within the process. We have to get everything approved and everything. But I will also say that I am pleasantly surprised by how much freedom we've been allowed to be weird with this and to be silly with it and to have fun with it. Like that was my initial concern, was like, are we going to be so boxed in by rules that but a lot of the rules are really common sense rules. Are just like, don't do this. And I'm like, we never would have done that. Like,
yeah, it's right.
It's been really reasonable. Like my worry would be that they'd be things like never have a character do anything that's like this or like that. And all of the guidelines are, you could almost imagine them yourself if I just said, think of 10 really reasonable restrictions on what that
they would have to say.
Yeah.
They have to tell you that you can't do this.
But it's just like,
because if they don't, then and then you do that, well, that's on them.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where it's like, I've been very pleased that I think all of our stories are very like ridiculous and silly, and we've been encouraged to be ridiculous and silly. I'm very excited to see what people think of it, because I'm sure, like with anything, like we were saying about Star Wars stuff, you tell any kind of story, no story is for everybody. There'll be people who are like, this is too weird, or this isn't weird enough, or I like,
even like something I'm interested in. This is uber specific, but something I'm interested in is like Pleakley in the live action, like doesn't have the Russian European accent, and we write Pleakley Jumba. to the original story, you know, and so he has that. There's some lines that sort of are that way, and I'm just wondering, like, what are the kids that are going to read this that are going to be like, that's not how he he doesn't sound like that. Like just the fact that like anyone whose entry point was the movie first, I'm so interested in even just what that is.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of when I was a kid when there were things like that that you just have to like accept certain premises. I think a good example would be like if you were watching Muppet Babies as a kid, there's actually a lot of stuff you have to sort of reconcile if you have any awareness of,
Yeah.
if your awareness is from the Muppets, the Muppet Show or the Muppet movies, and then you watch Muppet Babies and you're like, wait, they all met like this and later
Yeah.
work in a theater together, you know, like
Tommy and I were actually talking about this offline before when we didn't meet last time, but like because Space Ghost is a Dynamite series,
Mhm.
and we were talking about how like how I was introduced to Space Ghost and Space Ghost Coast to Coast at the same time, and how the thought of like, wait, he has a talk show, like just like how strange that was to like to think about both of them at the same time in this weird way.
Yeah.
yeah. But I think like that'll be very interesting to see how people reconcile it. Some people will be like, I'm bumping on this.
Mhm.
He sounds weird. It's not like the movie. I love the movie and these comics are weird. And other times it'll just be one of those things where you just have to figure out like, well, this is a different version of this story, or this is a different, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I
100%.
I also think like I think kids are better at and adults are better at sorting out, like sometimes people get hung up on the idea of what's canon and what's not
Mm-hmm.
canon, but then you watch other things where you're like, every Looney Tunes cartoon reboots itself
Sometimes
circumstantially,
within the cartoon you're watching.
where occasionally we would get a note for the Stitch comics that would be like, why is this happening? And our answer would be like, because it's weird and funny. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to make sense.
Right.
And they'd be like, okay, we just wanted to make sure we weren't missing something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because some of our storylines start from a place of rationality and like, here's a machine that does this, and then things go wrong, and it becomes more and more absurd and ridiculous and abstract and
Yeah, the
weird.
way in which it goes wrong doesn't necessarily connect to how it started in the first place. It's like it's now going wrong for this wholly other
I
thing.
would also say that like, you know, with when we were doing Tiny Dinos, there was a moment where we were like, we're very much playing these scientists, and neither James nor I are particularly we don't have science backgrounds.
Absolutely not.
And there was a point where I was thinking like, oh, are we playing in the sort of the Rick and Morty space of like, but then I was like, oh, it's like one of those charts where you have the different quadrants where there's like uh smart,
Yeah.
funny, dumb, smart, you know, like and
And how much of it is dumb, you know?
yeah. And I think that like in the world of Lilo and Stitch, the science is it's less like it's almost closer to magic, or there's like an
Yeah, it's
inexplicable
fantasy.
element of it.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, well, you don't know how it works, but he does because he's a scientist, and you just have to assume that, you know, Jumba knows more. We're writing a character who knows how these things work, and we're writing another character, Stitch, who's even smarter, who
Yeah.
intuitively grasps how these things work. And we, the writers of the story, are like, it just works. We
It
don't know
works.
how. You know,
Yeah.
the freedom to have a character invent something that we don't even understand, fully grasp the rules of it, and then when it goes out of control, you have Jumba being like, what went wrong? You know, I don't know. And we're just like, oh, no one knows how this machine works that we created.
Oh, I love it. I love it. What was the collaboration like? And how far along are you? You said there was 8 issues to this arc. Like, are you like on 4 or 5 right now about?
We're on script wise, we're on
Yeah.
7 right
Oh,
now.
okay, so you're almost done with the story.
In very, but each, as far as like ones that are locked and loaded, I think we're still waiting on notes for, I think, 3 and 4, right?
Yeah, we're still waiting on. We might have gotten to the notes for 3, so we're waiting on notes for 4. We've seen fully completed art for just the first issue so far.
Oh, and it looks
Um,
amazing. It looks
and
so good.
it truly looks so good. Like they did a great job. Greta and the letterer is escaping me right now, but truly like so much like so vibrant, and the character of the text also is just so, it's really moving. So I really hope people connect with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and just throw this up real quick so people could kind of see. And I'll put the link below so that you could go to dynamite .com and you could check it out. But obviously, one of the great things about Dynamite, not only the storytelling, but if you're a comic book collector and you're a big fan of Stitch, the covers that Dynamite puts out on each of their issues sometimes goes beyond ridiculous, to be quite honest. Like I was talking to the gentleman who created Gargoyles. They had almost 50 covers for issue 1
Oh wow.
here,
Wow.
which is just insane to me. But there is a collector side to this. There's a reader side to that, so I get it. But some of these covers look absolutely awesome too, and you got some pretty amazing artists on the covers as well. Edwin
Hmm.
Galmon, JAE Lee is one of my favorite artists.
Hmm.
Chung. I mean, there's some amazing stuff. And then Greta, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Is it Zella? Zaya?
I'm not sure either,
Yeah, so
but
I don't want to say it wrong, but the art on the interiors looks amazing as well.
Hmm.
See all the different covers that are going to be available, Virgin covers.
that's cool. They're doing the the
Yeah,
inks
the
on
the ink.
the
Yep,
Jay Lee
pencil and
ones. That's
inks.
so
Yeah,
cool.
that's amazing. So, if you're a collector and you're a big Disney fan, which my wife and I have 3 daughters, and they are huge Disney fans. So I haven't seen the new movie yet, but I have been told I need to. They loved it, so I'll have to get in there and watch it. But this is the
Yeah,
type of
it's
stuff
fun.
that they enjoy. I can't get.
I'm so thrilled. I mean, all of these covers look so spectacular. I'm really thrilled that for the first one that they have the Stitch with sort of the classic Disney, like the opening face card
Yeah,
Yeah.
that they used to have
And
for
I
like the classic
think
Disney
Nate was
shorts.
saying that they'll do it for each character as it keeps going. So
Oh, that's great. I don't remember him saying that. That's
yeah, I
great.
think he might have said that. So
that's
it looks
awesome.
like maybe the cover C will always be that, or
Hmm.
yeah, if this is going in order.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I mean, I grew up reading. I had all my dad's like old Dell comics from the 1950s. So I grew up really obsessed with Carl Barks comics, the who creator of Uncle Scrooge, and that's like such a great example of like he had such freedom to. Carl Barks was sort of just writing and drawing. He created Uncle Scrooge with there was no one at Disney saying like, yes, we approve this character. He's just like, this is their rich uncle, and he's the richest duck in the world, and he has a money bin, and here are the Beagle Boys, and his name wasn't even on any of those comics. Like we have our names on the cover of the issues.
Yeah.
Carl Barks didn't get credited until after he'd retired from doing comics,
Wow.
and he didn't even get there was all this fan mail that kids who were not like, there was no internet to talk about or anything. Kids were just writing letters to Dell and later Gold Key and saying they called him the good duck artist. That was like the term that is just evolved organically, that they knew who they were talking about. And because everybody who was editing those comics knew this guy is productive, he's prolific, he writes, it's funny, he's like, he got just title after title after title. They're doing these great Fantagraphics is reprinting everything, and they're doing Tasha's doing a big Carl Barks book that's coming out I think later this year. And the idea that we would get a chance to write in the tradition of that, because I really do feel like that's sort of in some ways the gold standard in my mind for like Disney comics, is things that are like funny but also exciting, and work for adults, but also like a kid could read it and it feels like there's nothing inappropriate for kids, but there's, I think, some sophisticated
Mhm.
storytelling and jokes in there that I think it for like smart kids, I think, and weird kids will be drawn to it, because I do think that Stitch, there's a reason why Stitch has gotten so popular. It's almost like this perfect, in the same way that he's in world is invented as this like perfect chaos machine. Uh in the world of Disney characters, Stitch sort of has all the things that we associate with like the classic, like all the characteristics of like Donald Duck and Goofy and Mickey Mouse, all these characters, but also with like the other sensibilities of other sort of like Looney Tunes, Tex Avery,
Yeah,
like
it's
Yeah.
almost Bugs
it,
Bunny. Yeah.
Bugs Bunny, yeah, crazy stuff. And
Taz.
it's all packed into one, very cute, but also funny. And the sort of feels like, oh, it's with in a relatively short span of time on this side of the new century, just has become as big as any character that Disney's ever created. So the idea that James and I are getting to tell some Stitch stories,
Yeah.
uh,
It's
I
absurd.
still kind of won't fully believe it until we have a copy, a physical copy of one of the comics in our hands with our names on it. Like, hey, we did it. Which is soon. It's happening so soon.
Soon, yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that this is happening, I'm sure other people were planning at the, oh, we'll have a comic out 2 months after the movie or 3 months after the movie. But for us, it sort of feels like, oh, like the movie of the summer kind of, and
Yeah.
we're putting out the comic.
The timing could not be more perfect for this title. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to be able to ride this amazing wave, and I think it's awesome, man.
I just hope I hope it's fun for people. It's just like, I feel like if I was a kid who was into the original or was into the new one, this would be the thing that I would have been on the
Yeah.
lookout for, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
That's the thing that gets me excited. It's just the idea that like 10-year-old me would have been like, when's that coming out? You know?
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Or like stumble upon it in a comic book shop or something and be like, whoa, what's this?
Yeah, yeah. Now,
And
what
then
is
looking at it and being like, it's different than the movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like to me, I would have been the kind of kid that would have been like, this, like, because that's what I liked about like the Donald Duck comics. Were like, oh, this is, there's a reason why when they made DuckTales, which is based on Carl Barks, the
Yeah.
first episode of the original DuckTales
Yeah.
starts with Donald Duck joining the Navy and leaving, because they're like, animated Donald Duck cannot deliver this amount of dialogue. He has to leave.
Now, James, you have some experience on comics. I think you did Powerpuff Girl. Like you've done some comic book stuff. Connor, I think this is your first time doing comics. Where does this rank compared to acting, compared to writing scripts for, TV shows, podcasts, or movies? Like, where does this rank in your experience of fun compared to some of the other stuff both of you have already accomplished?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, to me right now, comics are sort of the most fun. I mean, I love what you don't there's I think performing and writing are just different and just in general. But what I love about um writing comics specifically is it has that thing akin to animation where like while all of these things become a challenge for the artist and whoever is committing this to either paper or to screen, but there's a your imagine you can let your imagination run wild in a way that is harder when you are bogged down by either like the budgets or the sets or the costumes or whatever. And what I also love about writing comics is that like there's something collaborative about it. Obviously on our end, with writers and artists and editors, but I think there's something also collaborative with the reader as well, to where like the reader is doing that in between stuff. Is connecting the panels and doing things with their own imagination as they are reading the book. And so I love to me, particularly right now in my life, comics are up there in terms of the rank. I won't say a number or put a thing above or below, but there's certainly it's like I truly love doing it, and and getting to work on this specific title with Connor after having done the us doing this podcast where we're playing these weird kind of scientists who are bumping heads at times, and on this kind of journey of friendship. It's been amazing to get to do.
Love it. How about you?
Yeah, I, yeah, and I've never, I grew up wanting to be a cartoonist. I grew up first wanting to be an animator, and then the more I would learn about each new thing, I'd be like, oh, I don't think I can do that.
Yeah.
Um, like what I wanted was to make cartoons, and then I had a cousin who worked for the Don Bluth Studios. And I visited him, and the more I learned about what I would probably be doing if I was an animator, I'm like, oh, that's probably not. I I could imagine myself not liking doing that. And then I really wanted to do comics, and I always felt like I did comics in high school for like the school newspaper, but I just couldn't imagine. I just didn't have I didn't feel like I was ever going to be happy enough with my drawing to do it all the time. And you need to really, I think, be great at it and love doing it. And
Which Connor is, by the
but I
way.
don't.
For
I get
anyone
tired
who's,
of doing it very quickly. Like I'd be
yeah.
the type of person who I'd be great for a page and a half of a comic, and I'd be like, I don't want to draw anymore, which is a bad characteristic for a cartoonist to have. Which is like I don't finish anything I do. Like I have a really good page and a half in me, and then I'm like, I don't want to draw this guy again.
That's how long it is.
Or
A
he
page and a
doesn't look
half.
the same as he did a page ago because I'm changing it. Um, but it's been such a great opportunity to be able to sort of fall backwards into it. James, even when we're writing these, the process, we sort of alternate who's the captain of the ship from one issue to the next. And at this point, I'm still very much relying on James to be like, I'll sort of like format things, and then James will go back and be like, oh, okay, we're fixing this because I'm still learning the language of script writing comics a little bit.
To be clear, only to make our style uniform, because comic script writing is different depending on the comic writer that you're doing. So the Connor's not doing anything wrong. Let me
No,
be
but
clear.
you have you're more. There are things I'm learning where you'll like write something like, oh, that's how you write that in a comic
Mhm.
script form. I didn't know how to do that, and so and it takes a few tries before I remember that's how we do it. Um, but it's been, there is something about the fact that when people read these issues, I think it will be fairly obvious, and I think you can tell this in a lot of comics, that comics as an industry doesn't have the budget to have, when you have things that are obviously like written and designed by committee.
Mhm.
Sometimes you go see a movie and you'd be like, oh, there were a lot of cooks in this kitchen. A lot of people got to weigh in and say, I think we should have it like this. And just because of the nature of comics, we have enough voices that are collaborating with us and helping make sure we don't go off the rails and make sure that what we're doing is working. But we don't have so many people supervising that it feels like, I think people will be pleasantly surprised to know, and I think it's obvious when you read them, that like this is a fairly small team of collaborators
Mhm.
coming together to make a story, as opposed to dozens of executives saying like, well, we have to have this, or this has to tie in with this later, or I think it's still sort of small batch, artisanal creative process. And
Mhm.
as James is saying, like if you want to make um you know a giant Avengers Endgame type thing, you got to get everybody to show up, and you got to schedule everybody, you got to do this. Whereas for us to be able to write something and say like this happens, and
Yeah.
then they just have a very talented artist like Greta be able to be like, okay, that one will be
Yeah.
that will
This
be
is
an
what that's gonna
ambitious
look
one
like.
to draw.
Yeah.
In some ways, I think the fact that I'm aware as we write it that I don't have to draw it really frees up the storytelling, because we're like, I just trust that it will be drawn, because they will hire the people who are talented enough to make this work.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder, you both said you were part of the Citizens Brigade Theater, right? Did like that style of acting, the impromptu type of acting, I'm wondering if that doesn't give you an advantage when it comes to writing comic books compared to other people that don't have that experience, just from the storytelling to be able to draw things kind of last minute as you're talking out a line or a storyline. I'm wondering if that kind of advantage helps you when it comes to comic book writing.
I think it certainly does. I mean, improv is used as a tool to help in a variety of different circumstances, but we talk about it in terms of how it helps you as a writer to be able to think on your feet and be able to come up with quick ideas. But I'll use this anecdote as an example. Like when I met with Archie the first time I wrote for them, one of the things that they said to me was like they were like, what we love is that you do sketch, because sketch comedy is like you're already thinking in a way that's heightened and bizarre and it's like any given sketch that you've come up with before is something that would work as a could work as a comic, could work as a, as a part of an anthology or what have you. And so I definitely think, like, I don't know if it's necessarily an advantage, but it's certainly extremely useful to have when working on this stuff. Because anyone's experience is can help and inform things, but I think improv, it really works in the comic space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for storytelling, for these kind of stories, particularly for us to be able to sort of build on each other's ideas. Oh, if this happened, because a lot of improv is if this is true, what else is
100%.
true?
Yeah.
And I think all of these issues, because they're all sort of built around a system of Jumba inventing something for an evil purpose and then Stitch doing something that sort of meddles with it. And so we can sort of be like, well, if someone invented a thing like this, what else could be done with it? And that's sort of like our improv brain is very useful for a Stitch type character, because Stitch is very much a character who sort of is, Stitch would be a very good UCB style improviser.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
I also feel because you both have experiences in podcasting, that also from a collaboration and being able to build upon one another, I think you gain that skill when you are dealing with podcasts quite often because you have to feed off of one another in order to push the story, I think, forward. And then you build upon the story by pushing each other as well. And I feel like that could be a really good advantage, especially when there's two people writing one storyline. I've interviewed writers who don't have that experience, but they will write something, put it away, and come back to it the next day. And in principle, they're kind of doing the same thing. Is I come in with a fresh mind. Now I could kind of build upon that. Maybe I'll make a couple changes because I had maybe overnight to maybe not think about it at all, and coming back to it fresh allowed more thoughts. Do you think podcasting and that ability to kind of build upon the the guest or one another also helps in storytelling like this?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that, because I've never thought about it that way before, that when it's one person writing something that you go away and the next day,
Mhm.
sometimes you look at something you did and you're like, who did this?
Yeah.
And if it's, sometimes you're like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
And it's not, you're not being arrogant. So you're like, I don't remember coming up with this.
Right.
Wait till you're 50 and you go, did I even write that?
Yeah, you're improvising with yourself. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, the when you click with someone creatively and comedically, it's just one of those things where you're able to communicate in sometimes in shorthand, and also you're able to know, well, just yesterday there was James and I will, a lot of this is written over text or over Google Docs,
Yeah.
where we're sort of like where we're collaborating. And there was a thing yesterday where on issue number 7, James is like, I'm not sure that this makes sense.
I was confused by the ending. There was like, it seemed like two things were bumping against each other in the end. And I was like, oh, I don't quite get. It's like you want to do one or the other.
And I know that if James is confused by something, then I'm like, oh, that means there's something wrong. And I realized that there was a whole story beat that I had sort of not even really implied. I just knew something was going to happen, and I didn't put it into the outline. And I was like, oh, it's going to be like this. And he's like, okay, that makes sense. I'm like, yeah, it's probably good that James was able to tell me, like, you didn't write this part, basically. Like, the part that connected the ending and made it work, I
Right.
sort of wrote it in a way that if you really read between the lines, you could maybe get there. But I hadn't. It was sort of like I hadn't left a trail of breadcrumbs. Even it was just like, and so it's very good when you get to a system where you communicate well, because when something isn't working, you know that it's not just like, oh, you're being too hard on me, or you're giving me, no, you're nitpicking this or something. You're when I know if James doesn't understand it, that no one's gonna understand it. You know what I mean? Like that means that, like, oh, this, we have to fix this, because James always gets me, and if he's not getting something, it means I've left something out or I haven't communicated something. So it's such a on the one hand, it feels like it's taken a while since, I don't remember when our first conversation was about doing these.
It might have been like something like August
Mm-hmm.
or October of last year.
Oh, okay.
But now it feels very fast, like we're gearing up towards, like, oh, these are coming out.
Yeah.
And that's exciting to me. And I feel like once these initial 8 issues are out in the world, it's going to be very interesting to see what people like, what people
Hmm.
maybe don't like. I'm excited to see where this collaboration can go in terms of both future Stitch things, maybe, and also other things that I think we might be well suited for.
That was gonna be
Yeah,
fun.
I was going to ask that right now. So like comedy comic books, I just don't feel like there's enough of them. Like we have The Tick, which I'm a big fan of The Tick. And we've had some awesome comic books for many years. And now it comes in with like short arcs and then kind of goes away. But there are a couple independent creators, Lee Newman and Matt Schofield. Matt Schofield has a comic book and it's called Steamroller Man. And it is a superhero that has a steamroller as a head, but he wears glasses so no one knows who he is, just like Superman. Like it's
Yeah.
hilarious. And Lee Newman has one as well, which is hilarious. I would love to see more of that. And I feel like you having this experience with Stitch and so many creators going to indie so they own their IP and be able to build something. Have you already started talking about, man, maybe we could create something on our own, in addition to what you're doing from an IP standpoint, working on Stitch at Dynamite? Have you already thought about it, or have you even gotten that far of like, what can we do next together for a comic book?
Well, I have not voiced this to Connor, but with each passing day, I think even just first and foremost, Tiny Dinos could be could
100%.
certainly be
Uh-huh.
a comic. And but also to your point, Tommy, like there's endless opportunities that the next stage of comic writing for us could be for sure. I don't know if Connor's had any ideas, but
I haven't thought about it too much, but I like it. I, the genre of comic book that I loved the most growing up is what they call, I don't know if they still call it this, funny animal comics. That's
Mm,
what and
yeah.
it's not the biggest sphere in terms of, like, obviously, like, superhero comics and things are more, and sci-fi and fantasy and things, but funny animal, and that's essentially what this is. It's a funny animal comic, funny alien. And
Right.
but I really like the idea of us figuring out some other stuff too. Like, another comic that I really loved growing up was Gru the Wanderer. I
mhm.
always liked the
Oh
stuff
yeah.
that Marvel would put out on their, like, they'd have like a side brand, and
Yeah.
they'd be doing like Rocky and Bullwinkle comics and stuff like that. And uh but Gru the Wanderer was like such a funny comic that kind of lived in its own world. There weren't really a lot of other comics like that were so. I mean, it was. I think part of the reason why I stopped trying to become a cartoonist was because I'd look at the way that Sergio Aragonés would, in every issue, right, would draw these crowd scenes and these ships and just like a
Hmm.
million people and these battle scenes that were like, had like a million like gags in the background of, like, and I was just like, and he's like filling up all the margins of every Mad magazine, doing Mad Marginals and stuff. And I
Yeah.
was like, this guy loves drawing more
He's a
than I
legend.
love
I mean, he's a legend.
anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, if I can't be that guy, I don't think I can draw comics.
No.
It was
You
too
gotta
much.
hire
It
an
was,
artist, Connor. You'll be all right. You'll be all right.
Or even, but there's also it's you that became an expectation that you thought you needed to hit.
yeah,
But
100%.
there's plenty of pared down artists that are, and not just pared down, I don't mean that disparagingly, but that
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
is just not what you just said.
minimal
Yeah,
style. Yeah,
minimal, like just that don't do 40,000 people in the background of it.
Yeah.
no, but I
And
think like I do like the idea of us creating something that because I also feel like, you know, when people see these issues, I also think there's the potential for stuff both in comics and also outside the world of comics where, you know, you create something that's good in one sphere and people immediately are like, would you like to, you know, do a TV show? Would you like to do a
Absolutely.
movie or things like that? And
I'm begging anyone to anyone,
the
please.
and like anyone, almost anyone working in comics, we'd love nothing more than for it to lead to something else that really pays those bills.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I would encourage you to check out Lee Newman. He has a comic book called Sasson, and it's a superhero character who also is a ballerina, and he has like this. Sasson is a style of like a jump kick for a dancer. And that's
Oh,
his move. It's the most
that's
hilarious thing you'll
incredible.
ever see. And then Matt Schofield, who is actually a storyboard director on The Simpsons, has been for 25 years.
Hmm.
Steamroller Man. I think you two could definitely do something like that. And we need more of these like funny, just I don't know, get lost in kind of comic books. I mean, I love superheroes, I love horror, I love all the different genres, sci-fi, but you two would be amazing at that. So I think that that would be awesome. Tiny
Yeah,
Knocks or whatever that ends up being would be huge.
yeah. Well, stay tuned. I'm sure we're gonna once we
Yeah.
get through this batch of things, we'll see
Yeah.
what's next.
Well, I mean, congratulations on the title. Connor, your first, man. Congratulations. James back again. But I think Stitch is going to be huge for Dynamite. You always know how big it's going to be by how many covers they have, and they have at least 20 covers. So I
Yeah.
think they're expecting this to be pretty big as well.
It's really hitting me now how crazy it is for my first comic to be something that's
I mean, it's huge, right? You got
too
probably,
too popular.
But also that you know so well, and
yeah.
that is in your DNA in this way, which I think,
Yeah,
which was useful because I've said on other interviews that like I Stitch was not in my DNA in this same way, and so like if not for you, I don't think the comic would be as strong as it is, you know, like that under the understanding of the character that you have. So
yeah. I mean, one thing that's also like really fun on some level as well is that like because I'll admit I haven't seen the new movie yet because I wanted to wait till we got through this batch of issues before seeing it because part of me was like
it's
it's
gonna
gonna mess
influence
with
you.
my brain.
Yeah.
It'll bleed in,
um
right? It might bleed in a little bit with some of the story or something.
yeah, but one of the things that has been fun writing this, and like Kevin McDonald from Kids in the Hall, who's the voice of Pleakley in the original animated versions, he is someone that like when we're writing
Yeah.
that character,
Just fully hear him.
his voice as Pleakley is so easy to like. They have so many, not just from that character, but just from Kids in the Hall and other things where he has such a distinct comedic voice that it's very pleasurable to write for because there's the
Yeah.
part of you that you know never fully can escape from the like the Citizen Kane
Yeah.
Kids in the Hall sketch where he's like, it's Citizen Kane, Citizen Kane. We're like, that is sort of like you can ground yourself in writing the character just by like what would Pleakley say and writing it that way. That's such a fun
Yeah.
thing to tap into.
100%. 100%.
Well, amazing, gentlemen. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope we could do this again, maybe as we get closer to the end of this run, come back and we could actually talk about things that happened in the issues. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
I would love
Absolutely.
that. And once we get some reactions to it, it'd be fun to play around with those.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I'll have all the links on how to follow these two gentlemen on all socials, their podcasts, everything that they're doing. I also have the link for Dynamite. So if you want to get over there and check out some of those covers, that way you know which covers that you want your comic store to be able to order. I'll have the FOC codes down below, all that good stuff. We'll make it very easy for everybody who's watching to get over there and make sure that they are ordering their Stitch comic book in their local comic book store. Comes out August of this year. So just
Yeah, and for people out there with generational wealth, we want to encourage them to buy all the covers.
all
Yeah,
the
buy all of
covers,
them.
baby.
Why not?
You
For
will
people
get
out
people
there
doing
for
that.
whom money is no object,
No option.
prove it. Why not buy all the covers?
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate getting to meet you both and be able to talk to you. I really appreciate your time and congratulations on Stitch. And again, we'll do this once the Stitch run is over so we could talk about it.
Awesome.
All right, thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate you both. Have a great week.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.